The sound of shattering glass shook Amelia Nash awake, her heart pounding as her husband's drunken curses filled their small homestead on the outskirts of Santa Fe, New Mexico territory. It was 1876, and what had started as a hopeful marriage 8 years ago had deteriorated into a nightmare of broken promises and empty whiskey bottles. "Thomas," she called out, pushing back the threadbare quilt and rushing toward the main room. "What have you done now?" The sight that greeted her made her blood run cold. Thomas stood swaying by the doorway, a satisfied smile on his flushed face, while two men she'd never seen before were examining her children's room. Their 5-year-old twins, Sarah and Samuel, huddled together on their small bed, faces streaked with tears. "Mama," Sarah cried, reaching out with trembling hands. "Get away from my children," Amelia snarled, rushing toward them, but Thomas caught her arm, his fingers digging painfully into her flesh. "Not our children anymore," he slurred, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey. "Sold and paid for." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, struggling against his grip. $500, Thomas said with a hiccup. "Enough to clear my debts at the tables and then some." One of the men, tall with a scar running down his cheek, tipped his hat. "Madam, this is a legal transaction. Your husband signed the papers. These young ones will be well taken care of at Mr. Blackburn's estate in Colorado. They'll work, but they'll eat regular." "This is madness." Amelia fought harder, breaking free from Thomas's grasp. "You cannot sell children. They're not property." The second man, shorter but broader in the shoulders, stepped forward. "Law's a bit fuzzy out here in the territories, madam, but your husband's debts are real enough. These children or your land, that was the deal." Amelia looked at her cowering children, then at Thomas's indifferent face. In that moment, she knew the man she had once loved was gone, consumed by gambling and drink. "Thomas, please," she begged, hating herself for the weakness in her voice. "They're your flesh and blood." Thomas wouldn't meet her eyes. "They'll have a better life than I can give them, better than this." He gestured dismissively at their modest home, once built with love and hope, now a testament to his failures. "You've got 1 hour to get their things together," the scarred man said. "We ride at dawn." Amelia spent that hour in a daze, mechanically folding the children's few clothes, trying to comfort them with whispered promises she had no idea how to keep. Her mind raced through possibilities: run, hide, fight, but with 2 armed men watching and Thomas stumbling drunkenly about. She saw no immediate escape. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the men loaded her sobbing children onto their wagon. Amelia pressed small keepsakes into their hands: Sarah's mother's locket, Samuel's carved wooden horse, final pieces of home. "I will find you," she whispered fiercely, holding them close one last time. "I swear on my life I will bring you home." After they disappeared down the dusty road, Amelia turned to Thomas, who had passed out on their porch. Cold fury replaced her despair. She packed a small bag with essentials, took what little money remained in the house, and the old revolver her father had given her for protection. Without a backward glance, she walked toward town, determination hardening with each step. Santa Fe was awakening as she reached its outskirts. The territorial capital was a bustling blend of cultures: Spanish, Mexican, indigenous, and American, but Amelia had no time to appreciate its unique character. She headed straight for the sheriff's office, only to find the deputy barely awake, feet propped on the desk. "Madam," he asked, startled by her disheveled appearance. "My husband sold our children to pay his gambling debts," she stated, her voice surprisingly steady. "2 men took them at gunpoint. I need help." The young deputy shifted uncomfortably. That's a family matter, Mrs. Nash." Amelia Nash, And it's not a family matter, it's kidnapping, if your husband agreed to it." He shrugged helplessly. "The law's complicated out here, and Sheriff Wilson's out tracking those bank robbers from Albuquerque." Amelia stared at him in disbelief. "So you'll do nothing?" "I can take down some information, ask around about these men when the sheriff returns." Amelia didn't wait to hear more. She stormed out, tears of frustration threatening to spill. She needed help, someone who knew the territory, someone who could track, someone willing to challenge men like those who took her children. She found herself at the bustling marketplace, uncertain where to turn next. That's when she overheard two women talking about a ranch hand who'd recently defended a Mexican family from bandits single-handedly. "That Harper Fielding's got a reputation for trouble," one woman said, "but he's handy with both his fists and that Winchester of his." "Where might I find this Harper Fielding?" Amelia interrupted, not caring about social niceties. The women exchanged knowing looks. "Probably at Carter's saloon," the older one replied, "though it's hardly a place for a decent woman." Amelia straightened her spine. "Today, I'm not concerned with decency, only with results." Carter's saloon was exactly what she expected: smoky, loud, and filled with men who hadn't seen a bath in weeks. Conversation stuttered as she pushed through the swinging doors, but resumed quickly enough. A woman alone in such a place wasn't unheard of, though the assumptions about her character were immediate and unflattering. She approached the barkeep, a balding man with surprisingly kind eyes. "I'm looking for Harper Fielding." The man studied her for a moment. "May I ask why, madam?" "That's between me and him," she replied firmly. He nodded toward a corner table. "Good luck. He ain't the friendliest before noon." The man she approached sat alone, his back to the wall, a half-empty whiskey glass before him. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 30, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. A faded red bandana was tied loosely around his neck, and his eyes, when they lifted to meet hers, were the color of a summer sky. "Mr. Fielding?" she asked, remaining standing. He assessed her with one quick glance. "That depends on who's asking and why. My name is Amelia Nash. My husband sold our children to pay gambling debts. 2 men took them this morning, headed to Colorado. I need someone who can help me get them back." Harper Fielding's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those blue eyes. "Sit down, Mrs. Nash." She took the chair opposite him, back straight, hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "Start at the beginning," he said, pushing his whiskey aside. "And don't leave anything out." Amelia told him everything: Thomas's descent into gambling after a poor harvest, the mounting debts, the threats, and finally, the unthinkable transaction at dawn. "The man who took them mentioned someone named Blackburn with an estate in Colorado," she finished. "They said my children would work there." Harper's jaw tightened. "Augustus Blackburn owns half the mines in southern Colorado, has a reputation for using children in the narrow seams where grown men won't fit." Horror washed over Amelia. "They'll work my children in mines. If we're lucky, they'll just be house servants. Either way, it's no place for children." Harper drummed his fingers on the table. "Why come to me?" "The law is useless," she interrupted bitterly. "The deputy all but patted me on the head and sent me away. And your husband is dead to me," she said coldly. "I'll never go back to him." Harper studied her for a long moment. "This won't be easy. Blackburn has men, guns, and the kind of money that makes problems disappear. We'd be outnumbered and outgunned. I have some money." "Not much, but I didn't ask about payment," he cut her off. "I asked if you understand what you're getting into. This could get us both killed." Amelia leaned forward. "Mr. Fielding, they are my children. There is no price too high, no risk too great. I'll face Blackburn and all his men alone if I must. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Brave words from someone who probably can't shoot straight. "Try me," she challenged. "My father made sure his daughters could defend themselves before he let us marry." Something like respect flickered in Harper's eyes. "We leave at first light. Pack light, dress practical. Bring whatever money you have, we'll need supplies." "Thank you," she breathed, relief washing over her. "Don't thank me yet, Mrs. Nash. We haven't done anything but talk." He stood, leaving coins on the table for his drink. "Meet me at the livery stable on Alameda Street. And Mrs. Nash," his eyes held hers, "if you're not there at dawn, I'll understand. This is dangerous business." "I'll be there," she promised, rising as well, "with bells on." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Leave the bells. Where we're going, silence might save our lives." That night, Amelia took a room at a modest boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Hernandez, who asked no questions about why a married woman needed lodging alone. Amelia cleaned her father's revolver, counted her meager savings, and tried to sleep, haunted by images of her children crying for her. True to her word, she arrived at the livery stable before dawn, dressed in her sturdiest dress with her husband's old riding boots and a shawl for the cool mornings. Her hair was braided and pinned tightly to her head, and she carried only one small bag. Harper was already there, securing packs to two sturdy horses. He wore simple clothing, faded denims, a chambray shirt, and a worn leather vest. The only hint of his reputation was the quality Winchester rifle secured to his saddle and the well-maintained Colt at his hip. "You came," he said simply, looking up at her approach. "I said I would." She handed him the money she'd brought. "It's not much." He pocketed it without counting. "We'll make it work. Ever ride astride Mrs. Nash?" "Amelia," she corrected him. "And yes, though not for some years." "Harper," he returned the favor. "And good. We've got ground to cover." He handed her the reins to a steady-looking chestnut mare. "This is Penny. She's gentle but sure-footed. She'll serve you well." Amelia mounted with more ease than she expected, muscle memory returning quickly. Harper swung onto his own mount, a powerful bay gelding, and with a nod to the stable boy who'd helped prepare their horses, they set off just as the sun began to paint the eastern sky. "The men have about a day's head start," Harper explained as they rode. "But they'll be moving slower with children and a wagon. If we push hard, we might catch them before they reach Blackburn's place." "And if we don't?" Amelia asked, adjusting to the rhythm of riding again. Harper's expression darkened. "Then we'll need a different plan." Blackburn's estate is like a fortress. They rode steadily north, following the old Santa Fe trail. Harper was a man of few words, but he was attentive, making sure they stopped regularly to rest the horses and checking that Amelia was managing the journey. Despite her determination, by midday her muscles were screaming in protest after years without riding. "We'll stop here for a quick meal," Harper announced, gesturing to a small stream beneath a stand of cottonwoods. "The horses need water, and so do we." Grateful for the break, Amelia slid from the saddle, wincing at the stiffness in her legs. Harper pretended not to notice, busying himself with the horses while she stretched discreetly. He handed her a canteen and some jerky from his saddlebags. "Not fancy, but it'll keep us going." "Thank you." She took a long drink of water. "May I ask why you agreed to help me? You don't know me." Harper was silent for a moment, checking his horse's hooves. "Let's just say I've seen what happens in Blackburn's mines. No child deserves that." Something in his tone told her there was more to the story, but she didn't press. They all had their secrets, their pains. Instead, she asked, "Do you have a plan for when we find them? Depends on where we catch up to them." He straightened, meeting her eyes. "If it's on the trail, we might manage a simple ambush, 2 against 2 with surprise on our side. And if we reach Blackburn's estate, Then it gets complicated. His mouth set in a grim line. We'll need to scout, plan, maybe create a distraction. I can do whatever's needed, she said firmly. Harper's expression softened slightly. I believe you would, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. They continued northward, pushing the horses as much as was reasonable. Amelia's body protested, but she refused to complain. Every mile brought her closer to her children. As dusk approached, Harper led them off the main trail to a secluded spot for making camp. We'll have a cold supper, he explained. No fire. Can't risk drawing attention. Amelia nodded, dismounting stiffly. She helped care for the horses while Harper laid out their simple bedrolls and food. How far do you think they've gotten? She asked as they sat eating dried meat and hardtack. If they're heading straight for Blackburns, they'd be nearing the Colorado border by now. Harper studied the darkening sky. But men like that often take detours, saloons, other business. That might work in our favor. How do you know so much about Blackburn? Harper was quiet for a moment. Worked a silver mine of his years back, got out before it collapsed. 20 men and 3 boys weren't so lucky. He took a swig from his canteen. Blackburn never paid the families a cent, said it was an act of God. Amelia watched his profile in the fading light. Is that why you're helping me? Revenge, justice, he corrected. But yes, partly. He glanced at her. Rest while you can. We ride at first light. Amelia lay on her bedroll, staring up at the star-scattered sky. Exhaustion pulled at her, but worry kept her awake. Were her children safe? Were they crying for her? Had Sarah remembered to take her medicine for her weak chest? They're alive, Harper said quietly from his bedroll a few feet away. Blackburn paid good money for them. He'll keep them healthy enough to work. How did you know what I was thinking? She whispered. It's what any mother would think. There was a pause. Try to sleep, Amelia. Tomorrow will be harder than today. He was right. They rose before dawn, ate quickly, and were back on the trail as the first light touched the mountains. Amelia's muscles screamed in protest, but she gritted her teeth and focused on the horizon. By mid-morning, Harper's tracking skills proved their worth. Wagon tracks, he pointed out, kneeling to examine the dirt. Heavy load, 2 horses, headed northwest. They passed here yesterday. Hope surged in Amelia's chest. We're gaining on them, slowly, he cautioned. But yes. He remounted his horse. Let's push a bit harder. They rode through the heat of the day, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. Amelia's dress was dusty, her face wind-burned, but she felt a fierce satisfaction in her discomfort. Every mile was a mile closer to her children. Late in the afternoon, Harper suddenly raised his hand, signaling her to stop. Smoke, he said quietly, pointing to a thin gray line rising in the distance. Could be them making camp. They approached cautiously, leaving their horses secured in a stand of trees. On foot, they crept forward until they could see a small campfire with 4 figures around it, 2 men and her children. Amelia's heart leaped at the sight of Samuel and Sarah, huddled together near the fire. They looked unharmed, though Sarah's face was tear-stained and Samuel's expression was unnaturally solemn for a 5-year-old. They're alive, she whispered, feeling light-headed with relief. Harper put a steadying hand on her arm. Stay focused. We need a plan. They retreated to a safe distance to talk. 2 men, armed, Harper assessed, but likely not expecting trouble. We have surprise on our side. What do we do? Amelia asked, willing to follow his lead. I'll create a distraction, make them think there's a larger group approaching from the north. While they're looking that way, you circle around and get to the children. He handed her his spare pistol. You remember how to use this? She checked the chamber, her hands steady. Yes. Only if absolutely necessary, he warned. Gunfire will alert anyone within miles. With luck, we can get the children away without bloodshed. And if luck isn't with us, His eyes met hers, steady and serious. "Then we do what we must. Wait for my signal 3 owl calls in succession." Harper disappeared into the growing dusk. Amelia circled wide around the camp, positioning herself as close as she dared to where her children sat. From her hiding place, she could hear the men talking. "Should fetch a good price," the scarred man was saying. "Blackburn said he'd pay extra for a matched pair." "The girl looks sickly," the broader man replied. "Hope she doesn't die before we get paid." "She'll last long enough," came the callous response. "Besides, the boy's strong enough for 2. Amelia's blood boiled at their casual cruelty. She gripped the pistol tighter, remembering her father's lessons on the family farm in Missouri. "Only point it at something you're willing to destroy," he told her. Right now, she was very willing indeed. The sound of breaking branches came from the north, followed by muffled voices. Harper's distraction. Both men jumped to their feet, hands going to their weapons. "Check it out," the scarred man ordered his companion. "Could be Indians." As the broader man moved cautiously toward the noise, the promised owl calls sounded. Amelia burst from cover, racing toward her children. "Samuel, Sarah," she called softly. "Come quickly." Their heads whipped around, eyes widening in disbelief. "Mama," Sarah cried. "Quiet, darling. Run to me, both of you." They scrambled toward her just as the scarred man realized what was happening. "Hey!" he shouted, drawing his gun. A shot rang out from the trees, and the man cried out, dropping his weapon and clutching his arm. Harper emerged from the darkness, rifle aimed steadily. "Don't!" he warned as the man reached for his fallen pistol with his good hand. Meanwhile, the second man came running back at the sound of gunfire. Amelia pushed her children behind her and raised her pistol. "Stop right there," she commanded, her voice remarkably steady. The standoff lasted only moments before Harper's voice cut through the tension. "You've got 2 choices," he told the men. "Ride away now and live, or try something foolish and die." The wounded man glared. "Blackburn will have your hides for this." "Blackburn's a long way off," Harper replied evenly. "And you'll be dead before he even knows what happened. Your choice." The men exchanged glances, clearly calculating their odds. Finally, the uninjured one nodded. "We're leaving, but this ain't over." "For your sakes, it better be," Harper said coldly. "Because if I ever see either of you again, I won't aim for the arm." Under Harper's watchful eye, the men gathered their belongings and mounted their horses. The scarred one winced as he pulled himself into the saddle, blood seeping through his sleeve. "Tell Blackburn he should find a new line of work," Harper called after them as they rode away. "Child stealing doesn't pay as well as he thought." Only when they were out of sight did Amelia drop to her knees, gathering her children in her arms. "Are you hurt? Did they hurt you?" she asked, running her hands over them, checking for injuries. "We're okay, Mama," Samuel said solemnly. "They said we were going to work for a rich man." "In the mines," Sarah added, her small face pinched with fear. "They said we'd have to go under the ground." "Never," Amelia promised fiercely. "You're safe now, you're with me." Harper approached cautiously, not wanting to frighten the children. "We should move," he said gently. "Those men might decide to circle back once they've bandaged that wound." Amelia nodded, rising to her feet with Sarah in her arms. Samuel stared up at Harper with wide eyes. "Are you a real cowboy?" he asked, voice filled with wonder. A smile softened Harper's weathered face. "I suppose I am, young man." "He's a hero," Amelia told her son. "He helped me find you." They gathered what supplies they could from the abandoned camp and returned to their horses. Harper fashioned a makeshift seat for Samuel in front of him, while Sarah rode with Amelia. "We'll head east," Harper decided. "Away from Blackburn's territory. Find somewhere to rest properly." They rode for another hour before finding a sheltered spot to make camp. The children, exhausted by their ordeal, fell asleep almost immediately, curled together on Amelia's bedroll. Amelia sat watching them by the small fire Harper had deemed safe to light, tears of relief finally flowing freely down her cheeks. "You did it," Harper said softly, sitting beside her. "You got them back." "We did it," she corrected, meeting his eyes. "I can never repay you," he shook his head. "Seeing them safe is payment enough." "What happens now?" she asked. "I can't go back to Santa Fe. Thomas might try to take them again, or worse." Harper poked at the fire with a stick. "I know some people in Durango, honest folk who might help you start fresh." "Durango," she repeated, testing the name. "Is it far?" "A few days' ride. It's growing fast, new businesses opening. A determined woman might find opportunities there." Amelia considered his words, watching her sleeping children. "A fresh start sounds like exactly what we need." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the crackle of the fire and the children's soft breathing the only sounds in the night. "What about you?" she finally asked. "What will you do after you've delivered us safely to Durango?" Harper shrugged. "What I always do, move on, find work." Something about his casual tone made her heart ache. "You don't have a home to return to." "Haven't had a real home in years," he admitted. "Not since my family's farm failed after the war." "I'm sorry," she said softly. He offered a half-smile. "Don't be. I've seen more of this country than most men ever will." "Still," Amelia said, "everyone deserves somewhere to belong." The look he gave her was unreadable in the firelight. "Get some rest, Amelia. Tomorrow will be another long day." The journey to Durango took 4 days, traveling at a pace the children could manage. They avoided main trails and settlements, Harper ever vigilant for signs of pursuit. But it seemed the men had indeed chosen to cut their losses rather than face Harper's rifle again. During those days on the trail, Amelia learned more about the quiet cowboy who'd risked his life for her family. Harper had fought for the Union during the war, returned to find his family's Missouri farm in ruins, and had been drifting ever since. He'd worked as a ranch hand, a miner, occasionally a bounty hunter, but never stayed anywhere long. "Restlessness gets in your blood," he explained one evening as they made camp. "Hard to shake once it takes hold." The children, initially shy around him, quickly warmed to his quiet strength. He taught Samuel how to build a proper campfire and showed Sarah which wildflowers were safe to pick. By the 3rd day, they were chattering to him constantly, and to Amelia's surprise, he responded with patience and genuine interest in their questions. "You're good with them," she observed as they rode side by side, the twins finally napping after hours of excitement. Harper looked momentarily uncomfortable with the compliment. "They're good kids, smart." "Yes, they are," she agreed proudly. "Samuel has his father's quick mind before the drinking took it. And Sarah, she notices everything. Nothing escapes her." "Like her mother," Harper said softly. Amelia felt her cheeks warm and changed the subject. "Tell me about Durango. What kind of place is it?" "Growing fast since the railroad came through. Mostly miners, railroad men, and the businesses that serve them." He glanced at her. "Decent folk too, though. Churches, a school. A woman looking to start fresh could do worse." "And what will I do there? I have no trade besides farming and no land." Harper considered this. "You sew well," he noted, gesturing to the neat patch she'd added to Samuel's torn shirt the previous evening. "Every farm wife sews," she replied with a self-deprecating smile. "Not like that," he insisted. "You've got a gift for it. I noticed how you redesigned your skirt for riding without anyone teaching you. There's always need for a good seamstress in a growing town." His observation surprised her. She hadn't thought he'd noticed such details. On the morning of the 4th day, they crested a hill and Durango spread before them, a bustling town nestled in a valley, with mountains rising beyond. The railroad cut through its center, and even from a distance, they could see the activity of a community in the full flush of growth. "It's beautiful," Amelia breathed, taking in the view. "It's a start," Harper agreed. "Come on. I know a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Calloway. She's strict but fair, and she's got a soft spot for children." Mrs. Calloway proved to be exactly as Harper had described, a formidable woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, but a fundamental kindness that showed in how she immediately produced milk and cookies for the twins. "Any friend of Harper's is welcome here," she told Amelia, showing them to a modest but clean room with 2 beds. "Though I'll have you know I run a respectable establishment. No gentlemen callers in private rooms." "Mrs. Nash is a widow," Harper said smoothly, ignoring Amelia's startled glance. "Just arrived from Santa Fe with her children." Mrs. Calloway replied, clearly not entirely convinced. "Well, widow or not, my rules stand. First week's rent in advance, meals included." Harper paid before Amelia could protest, then helped carry their few belongings upstairs. Once the children were settled in the room, exploring their new surroundings with excitement, he pulled Amelia aside in the hallway. "There's enough there for 2 weeks," he said quietly, pressing additional money into her hand. "Should give you time to find your feet." "Harper, I can't accept." "You can and you will," he interrupted firmly. "For the children." She reluctantly pocketed the money. "How can I ever repay you?" "Live well," he said simply. "Make a good life here." The realization that he was saying goodbye hit her suddenly. "You're leaving?" "Already. Best this way," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "I've got business up north." "Will you come back?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Something flickered in his blue eyes. "I'm not good at staying in one place, Amelia." "The children will miss you," she said softly. "They'll be fine. They've got their mother." He hesitated. "The strongest woman I've ever met." Before she could respond, Sarah and Samuel came bounding into the hallway. "Mr. Harper, Mrs. Calloway says there's a park with a pond and ducks." Samuel exclaimed. Harper knelt to their level. "That sounds exciting. You two be good for your mother, all right. Mind what she says." Sarah's smile faded. "Aren't you coming to see the ducks, too?" "Mr. Harper has to go away for a while," Amelia explained gently, her heart aching at the disappointment on her children's faces. "But you'll come back, won't you?" Samuel asked earnestly. "You promised to teach me to fish." Harper ruffled the boy's hair. "I'll try, partner." "Can't make promises, but I'll try." The children hugged him fiercely, and for a moment, Amelia saw something vulnerable in Harper's usually guarded expression. "Thank you," she said simply when he stood, "for everything." He nodded once, picked up his hat, and with a final glance at the 3 of them standing together, walked down the stairs and out of their lives. The first weeks in Durango were harder than Amelia had anticipated. Though Harper's money kept them housed and fed, she struggled to find steady work. She took in mending and did laundry for single miners, but the pay was meager and inconsistent. The children adjusted better than she'd feared. Mrs. Calloway, for all her stern demeanor, clearly adored them and often watched them while Amelia worked. They made friends with other children in the neighborhood and seemed to put the trauma of their abduction behind them with the remarkable resilience of the very young. Only at night, when Sarah sometimes woke crying from nightmares, did Amelia see the lingering effects of what they'd been through. "I dreamed the bad men came back," Sarah would sob, and Amelia would hold her close, promising that no one would ever take her away again. One evening, about a month after their arrival, Mrs. Calloway approached Amelia as she sat mending a miner's shirt on the boarding house porch. "You've got talent with that needle," the older woman observed. "Wasted on rough work like that." Amelia smiled tiredly. "It pays barely, and I'm grateful for it." Mrs. Calloway settled into the rocking chair beside her. Ever thought of making dresses? There's a shortage of good dressmakers in town. All these miners' wives coming in on the train wanting the latest fashions. I've never made anything fancy, Amelia admitted. Just practical clothes for farm life. But you could, Mrs. Calloway insisted. I've seen how you altered that old dress of mine to fit you better than it ever looked on me. You've got an eye for it. The conversation planted a seed in Amelia's mind. The next day, she visited the mercantile and spent some of her precious savings on pattern books and fabric scraps. In the evenings, after the children were asleep, she designed and sewed a dress, unlike anything she'd made before, a stylish day dress with careful details and flattering lines. When it was finished, she wore it to church the following Sunday. By the end of the service, 3 women had asked who had made her dress, and she returned home with orders for 2 more. Word spread quickly in the small community. Within weeks, Amelia's reputation as a skilled dressmaker was established, and she had more work than she could handle alone. Mrs. Calloway offered her the use of a small room off the kitchen as a sewing room, and soon Amelia was teaching a young girl named Jenny as an apprentice to help with the simpler tasks. 4 months after arriving in Durango, Amelia had saved enough to rent a small cottage on the edge of town. It wasn't much: 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a front room that she converted to a sewing space where clients could come for fittings, but it was theirs. "Our new home," she told the twins as they excitedly explored the rooms. "What do you think? Can we have a dog?" Was Samuel's immediate question, making her laugh. "Perhaps," she allowed. "Once we're properly settled." That evening, after tucking the children into their new beds, Amelia sat on the small porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in gold and pink. For the first time since that terrible morning when her children were taken, she felt a sense of peace, of possibility. Yet even in this moment of contentment, her thoughts drifted to Harper. She wondered where he was, if he was safe, if he ever thought of them. The children still mentioned him regularly, especially Samuel, who had taken to wearing a bandana around his neck in imitation of his hero. Life settled into a pleasant rhythm. Amelia's dressmaking business flourished, and she even hired a second assistant. The children started school and thrived, making friends and bringing home art projects and books. They adopted a scruffy dog that Samuel named Buck, and their little family felt complete. Almost complete, Amelia sometimes thought in the quiet evenings when the children were asleep and the house felt particularly empty. It was early spring, nearly a year after their arrival in Durango, when Sarah came running home from school, her face alight with excitement. "Mama! Mama! Guess what I saw in town?" she exclaimed, bursting through the door while Amelia was fitting Mrs. Peterson, the banker's wife, for a new Sunday dress. "Sarah, I'm with a client," Amelia gently reminded her. "Can it wait just a few minutes?" "But Mama, it's Mr. Harper." "I saw him at the general store." Sarah bounced on her toes. "Samuel stayed to talk to him. He said he's back for good this time." Amelia's hands froze in the act of pinning a hem. "Are you certain?" she asked, her heart suddenly racing. "It's him, Mama. He has the same blue eyes and everything." Mrs. Peterson smiled knowingly. "You go on, Amelia. We can finish this fitting tomorrow." Hardly aware of helping Mrs. Peterson change back into her day dress or seeing her out, Amelia found herself smoothing her hair and pinching color into her cheeks before taking Sarah's hand. "Show me," she said simply. They walked quickly to the general store, Sarah chattering excitedly the whole way. As they approached, Amelia saw them through the window. Samuel perched on the counter, animatedly telling a story to a tall man whose back was turned to the door. Even from behind, she knew it was him. The set of his shoulders, the way he stood, the dark hair now perhaps a bit longer than before. When the bell above the door announced their entrance, he turned, and those familiar blue eyes met hers. "Amelia," he said, her name a gentle exhalation. "Harper," she returned, suddenly aware of her work apron and loose wisps of hair escaping her bun. "This is a surprise." Samuel hopped down from the counter. "Mr. Harper's been all the way to Montana, Mama, and he fought off a bear." Harper's mouth quirked in that half-smile she remembered. "It was more of a disagreement than a fight," he corrected. "The bear and I decided to go our separate ways." "Mr. Fielding was just buying supplies," the shopkeeper interjected. "Says he's settling on that old Ferguson place outside town." Amelia's eyes widened slightly. "Settling? You?" Harper shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. "Thought I might try staying in one place for a change." "He's going to teach me to ride a real horse," Samuel announced proudly, "and build things with wood." "Is he now?" Amelia raised an eyebrow at Harper, who had the grace to look slightly abashed. "I might have made some promises," he admitted. "If that's all right with you, of course." The shopkeeper busied himself with Harper's order, tactfully giving them some privacy. "Why Durango?" Amelia asked quietly, the unspoken question clear in her eyes. Harper met her gaze directly. "I think you know why." A year's worth of wondering, of what-ifs, of quiet longing crystallized in that moment. "The children have missed you," she said softly. "Just the children?" he asked, a rare vulnerability in his expression. Before she could answer, Sarah tugged on Harper's sleeve. "Will you come see our new house? I have my own bed, and we have a dog named Buck, and Mama made curtains with flowers on them." Harper looked to Amelia for permission. She nodded, a smile breaking through. "We were just about to have supper. There's plenty if you'd like to join us." "I'd like that very much," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. Supper was a lively affair, with the twins competing to tell Harper everything he'd missed in the past year. He listened attentively, asking questions and expressing appropriate amazement at their accomplishments. Amelia watched him with the children, seeing how naturally they responded to him, how easily he fit into their small world. After the meal, when the children reluctantly went to bed with promises that Harper would visit again the next day, Amelia and Harper sat on the porch in the mild spring evening. "You've done well," he said, looking at the neat little house. "I knew you would." "It hasn't been easy," she admitted. "But we're happy here." "The Ferguson place isn't much," he said after a moment, "needs work, but the land is good and there's a stream with fish for Samuel." "Why now, Harper?" she asked directly. "It's been a year." He looked down at his hands. "I tried staying away. Thought it was for the best." He paused. "But I kept thinking about you, all of you. Found myself comparing every town, every view to Durango. So you came back on a whim." There was no accusation in her tone, just a need to understand. "No," he said firmly. "I came back because I finally admitted to myself what I've known since I watched you face down those men to save your children. That you're the bravest, strongest woman I've ever known, and that I—" He faltered, then met her eyes. "That I love you, Amelia. Have since somewhere between Santa Fe and here." The simple declaration hung in the air between them. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. "A year is a long time," she said softly. "Too long," he agreed. "I won't ask for promises. Just a chance to show you I can be more than a drifter. That I can be someone the three of you can count on." Amelia reached out and took his hand. "The children already adore you," she said. "And I—" She took a deep breath. "I've thought of you every day since you walked out that boarding house door." Harper's fingers tightened around hers. "I won't leave again," he promised. "Not unless you ask me to." "I won't ask," she whispered, and when he leaned forward to kiss her, it felt like coming home. The courtship that followed was proper but swift. Harper worked tirelessly on the Ferguson place, rebuilding the old cabin and clearing fields for planting. He came to town regularly, taking the children fishing or riding, and courting Amelia with a quiet determination that charmed her and scandalized some of the town's more conservative elements. "A widow with 2 children should think practically," Mrs. Calloway advised one afternoon when Amelia visited. "Though I'll admit, Harper Fielding has changed. There's a steadiness to him now that wasn't there before." "He makes us happy," Amelia said simply. "All of us." The wedding took place in late summer, a simple ceremony in the town's small church with the twins as attendants and most of the town in attendance. Amelia wore a dress of her own design, ivory with delicate embroidery along the hem and sleeves. "You're beautiful," Harper whispered when he saw her walking down the aisle toward him. "You're not so bad yourself," she returned, taking in his new suit and freshly trimmed hair. The restless cowboy had transformed into a man with purpose, with roots, yet the strength and quiet intensity that had first drawn her to him remained. They moved to the Ferguson place after the wedding, though Amelia maintained her dressmaking business in town, riding in 3 days a week while Harper watched the children. The old cabin, under Harper's skilled hands, expanded into a comfortable home with room for the family to grow. And grow it did. The following spring, Amelia gave birth to a son they named James after Harper's father. 2 years later, a daughter, Elizabeth, joined the family. The twins, now approaching their teens, doted on their younger siblings and thrived under Harper's guidance. Samuel, showing his stepfather's aptitude for working with his hands, became Harper's shadow, learning to build and repair, to track and hunt. Sarah, more scholarly, excelled in school and helped Amelia with her business, showing a flair for design that promised to surpass even her mother's. On the 10th anniversary of their arrival in Durango, Amelia stood on the porch of their home, watching Harper teaching little James to ride his first pony while Elizabeth, now a precocious 5-year-old, supervised from the fence. Sarah, nearly 16 and as beautiful as her mother, sat on the porch step reading, while Samuel, tall and strong at 15, repaired a harness nearby. "What are you thinking about, looking so serious?" Harper asked, coming to join her after ensuring James was safely in control of his mount. "That day in Santa Fe," she replied honestly. "How close I came to losing everything and how much I've gained instead." Harper wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. At 42, there was silver at his temples and lines at the corners of his eyes, but he was still as handsome to her as the day he'd faced down armed men to save her children. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. Amelia looked at their blended family, the twins who had survived trauma to become strong, capable young people, their younger children born of love and stability, the prosperous farm and business they had built together. "Not one," she said, turning in his arms to kiss him. "Not a single one." As the sun set over their land, painting the mountains in gold and purple, Amelia Nash Fielding silently thanked whatever twist of fate had led her to that saloon in Santa Fe a decade ago, to a quiet cowboy with steady hands and a heart brave enough to fight for a desperate mother and her children. From the darkest moment of her life had come this, a family bound by love rather than blood, a home built on trust and shared dreams, and a love story unlike any she could have imagined on that terrible dawn when she thought her world had ended. Instead, it had only just begun.